Hello everyone. Today I'm here with MEP Mr. Vladimir Prebilič. He's an MEP for the Greens Party and also European Free Alliance. He's also the Shadow Rapporteur for Türkiye Report 2025, which was recently published. So thank you very much for agreeing to meet with us and to have this interview. I'd like to start with the first question. So the report describes the continuing deterioration of the rule of law and human rights in Türkiye. Yet the EU continues to deepen cooperation with Ankara on issues such as migration, security, and defense. And as you know, currently there's a NATO summit currently going on in Ankara. So doesn't this risk sending the message that geopolitical interests ultimately outweigh the democratic values, and what should the EU do differently to restore its credibility?
Well, this is exactly my words to the European Commission. As you would know, unfortunately or fortunately, the powers within the European Union are basically divided between the Council, Parliament and the Commission. When it comes to the protection of human rights, when it comes to protection of democratic values, I strongly believe that European Parliament is the pillar for this. However, we do not have all the powers, to impose certain sanctions or certain, regulation to a certain country. This is on behalf of the Commission and most importantly on the level of the European Council. But European Parliament was always clear about things that you brought it up. One, the democracy, democratic values, human rights, freedom of speech and stuff like that, anti-corruption. These are the things that we will always stand for or fight and support those people who are fighting against deterioration of the values that I mentioned before. We are not happy that the Commission continues to somehow support the government in Ankara and try, maybe not ignore, but outmaneuver the latest developments in Turkey. I was, in quotation mark, lucky enough that I visit also Silivri prison myself. And of course, I cannot express, let's say, depression from my side. What is happening there? It should not happen. Unfortunately, Commission does not always share our standpoint, but again, at the end of the day, the Parliament will continue to be really vigilant, and we will do whatever we can, A, to support all democratic forces in Turkey, and B, to be a balance even when Commission would like to outmaneuver something. So the position of European Parliament is clear. We are not happy about the things that Commission does, but also on the other side, I try to understand that geopolitics is working as always, and we have to balance everything. So let's say that we are like a bad and good cop. In this situation, we will be the good cop, of course, defending the rights, and we will try also to balance the acts of the Commission. And one thing should be clear. From our perspective from the European Parliament, democracy and democratic values can never be traded to any kind of geopolitical interests.
Of course, yes. Okay, now my second question will be about the implementation of the judgments from the European Court of Human Rights. So despite repeated findings of convention violations, individuals continue to be arrested, imprisoned on the same grounds that the court has already found to be unlawful. So from your perspective, what more can the EU to do to ensure the effective implementations of these judgments from the court?
Yes. I think, as I started before, the European Parliament's position on this is quite clear, and this is the implementation should happen regardless. So, balancing that is not necessary, or even trying to, put on a blank eye, well, this is not important, it's not the right way to go. What can we do? I think there are two things that the European Commission and the whole European Union can do when we talk about this issue. Number one, we all know that Turkey would like to get a so-called visa liberalization policy. So, my advice to the Commission, who has all the cards in the hand, would be, yes, let's talk about it, but deliver that and that. So this is one leverage. The other one is the economic cooperation. We all know that there should be change in this I would say tariffs approach and so on, opening the markets. Of course, we would also like Turkey to be much more integrated in the European market. But again, now we come to this second part. This is, yes, you have to deliver that and that. I think that we have our powers in our hands, let's say, to persuade the authorities in Turkey that implementation of the court should definitely happen. Why? Because we talk about rule of law. If we undermine rule of law, we undermine democracy, and this means that we undermine the essence of everything that we stand for. So my idea is, the Commission could use or should use this leverage to persuade Ankara and the authorities to implement the decisions of the court.
Yes, very well said. And my third question will be about the Istanbul Convention. As we know, Turkey was the first country to ratify Istanbul Convention, also the first country to withdraw from it in 2021. So looking at the recent detention of mothers, female students, and also the allegations of degrading treatment such as strip search. So do you see a broader deterioration in the state's approach to women's rights beyond the issue of domestic violence in Turkey?
Yes. First, I was really pleasantly surprised that Istanbul Convention was first signed by Turkey. This is a very good sign. And of course, heavily disappointed when happened the second part. I think, that in 21st century, we should not have these kinds of debates anymore existing. Why? Because regardless the sex you have, or female or male, we should be weighted by equal standards. So I strongly believe the topic should not even be on a table. Of course, when it comes to Turkey, it's unfortunately not the only country having this kind of attitude. Also, some countries, even members of the European Union, are not able to, go against violence at home, especially within families. So these things should be more debated and should be more carefully looked into. When it comes to Turkey, again, I think that Commission and the European Union should be much more sensible what is happening, because this is important part of our society that is vulnerable. And I always say, attitude is weighted through the lenses how you handle the vulnerable part of society. If you are grown up enough, if you are a good statement personality, then you would never leave a vulnerable person behind. You will protect them. And this is also the message to the president. If you want to be a true and leading president, this should not happen under your watch. So this is deterioration that nobody is happy about, and we discussed it a lot, and it also was brought in the last resolution of the European Parliament. But again, it's a domestic issue. However, we will support that to happen in a very short while, if we can.
Yes, you very well said that the president should protect everyone, especially the vulnerable groups.
Exactly. Yes. This is the good president.
Of course.
Okay.
So the fourth question, last but not least, of course, is about, so the 2025 report addresses the misuse of anti-terrorism legislation in general terms. But unfortunately, it does not specifically refer to the Gülen movement or to the reported cases involving the criminalization of humanitarian assistance and also acts of solidarity towards individuals accused of the links to the movement. So was this omission intentional, or do you believe that these issues need more explicit attention in the future reports?
Well, there is always room for the improvement, I would say. But when it comes to the anti-terroristic act in Turkey, I have to be really open with you. As a professor at university, always tell my students, whenever you're asked by authority that you have to give your rights, your personal and human rights, on the balance with the security, then something is wrong within the country. Because the leadership should perform all the security measures not to, go too far taking your rights away. If the government cannot do that job, maybe there should be a next government that is more capable of doing it. Why I'm saying that is because anti-terroristic act, this was also the case when I was working in Council of Europe, really broadly defines terrorism and can be misused in many ways. So I understand, of course, the authorities should protect citizens, but in the way that the rights should not be deprived to grave extent. We all saw what happened even in the United States. Not mentioning Gülen movement was, I think, a trade-off when we put the resolution together. But once again, I also had a debate with ex-Minister of Interior, Süleyman Soylu. Yes, and we exchanged that in person, in lifetime. And I say the same thing. I always am on the side to fight the terrorism, but not to threaten the citizens. I'm not sure that the present government in Turkey is aware of that, and unfortunately I see that this legislation can be misused even to, in quotation mark, handle different kinds of people within society. This is the wrong way to go, and this has nothing to do with anti-terrorism in any kind of a country.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for answering our
Sure.
questions.
Sure.